Minutes to speak. Our first speaker, staff, do we have any speakers in the queue?
We have two in the queue right now. The first speaker is Scott Ramming.
Mr. Remy, you're up.
Okay, are you able to hear me yet?
I am able to hear you now.
Okay. I don't see my face in the app, but I will go. I'm Dr. Michael Scott Ramming, resident of District C near the 30th and Downing light rail station. And my comment is about the current service change process, which I'm really frustrated with and trying to control my emotions, but please pardon me if I don't manage to keep them in check. I had intended to attend one of the 3 virtual public meetings that were hosted on MS Teams back in February. When I joined on the first day with my iPhone, and granted it's not the latest model, but I'm still pinging it off, I got a message that I had entered an invalid link, and I copied it, pasted it, double checked the password, even called the information center, and they weren't able to diagnose it either. So I just resolved to try again the following day when I'd be working at home and have access to my laptop as well, except returning from a doctor's appointment. That was the day of a snowstorm, and I wound up waiting over 50 minutes for an E-line that were apparently bunched up with similar number of H lines behind the Louisiana Pearl station. So I wasn't able to get home. Part of that was even after switching to take the R line to the A line, the transfers at Peoria Station appear to be designed to maximize transfer waiting time rather than minimizing it. But since I wasn't able to participate, I did realize that there was the opportunity to email comments. I wouldn't be able to have any of my questions answered. I did notice that the Friday deadline and spent Thursday evening emailing those comments. There were 6 total. However, in the summary from tonight's packet, I definitely don't see 5 of those 6. And I have no way of knowing whether I'm one of the 12 customers who support combining routes 34 and 38. Or if perhaps I'm the 13th, just part of the summary. My support for that combination isn't completely unconditional or it's qualified, because I do have a concern that it puts more service on the California and Stout couplet. It would be 6 buses an hour during peak and midday. Versus the 4 E-line trains per hour nearby on Welton Street. My email had some suggestions for spreading out that service, but I don't even know if that was received. So if you can understand my frustration, maybe I've had bad luck with tech. I use it for work, but I'm no means an IT professional. And I can flexing my privilege, but if I'm having difficulty participating in your virtual public meetings, I just wonder how much more would people who either aren't as familiar with tech, have less flexible work schedules, have less faith in their ability to access and influence the system. And I think that you should actually be more concerned about the low amount of public participation rather than relieved that, oh, there's only 2 comments tonight. There must mean people are pretty happy. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Do we have other speakers in the queue, Jillian?
Next up, we have Richard Bamber.
Mr. Bamber, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. I also would like to speak on the service change process, and I share many of the concerns that previous speaker, Dr. Ramming, does have. For this round of the process, I attended all 3 public meetings. At one of them, I spoke, and it was again on the merging of 34 and 38, which in general we support. That said, we made a comment that this route would be much more useful if it served Union Station. And some of you might have seen a map that's been circulated where we explain that in detail. An email was also sent to the service change team on February the 3rd. We are concerned in the same way as the previous speaker. I'm concerned in the way the comments are summarized. This is on page 66 of your board briefing packets. It says 12 comments were submitted in support of, and it just says support the merge of these 2 routes. Now, in addition to my comments, I'm aware of 4 other emails that were in support of the merge and in support of the Union Station detour as well, which means at least 5 of the 12 comments were in support of this amendments to Union Station, and yet it does not appear on the comment summary. Okay. The other question I have is, when comments come in, we never know what happens to them. For example, a comment I didn't submit and I don't necessarily endorse is add a bus stop at Colfax Avenue and Emerson on the 15L. It's been submitted. What happens to that comment? Where are those 4 comments? Where can we read them? Where can we read the response? Where can we see the tracking? You know, there is absolutely very little transparency there. The other one that kind of almost is starting to scare us nowadays is when we read schedule adjustments. What does that mean? Because last time it got the A line to the R line people. Will it blow my connection up? You know, we absolutely wonder. So, you know, when the public comments phase of the service changes, there should be a schedule pack, and it might be 100 pages long and it might be only a few of us look at it, but the transparency will be there. But my overall view is many people we see the bus network in particular as inefficient, difficult to understand, difficult to use, and has not had a major update in decades. Okay. This process has been running for longer than I'm sure most of the current board staff, certainly longer than current CEO has been in place. I think it's probably now time to take a look at it and give it a big overhaul so it actually does what it's intended to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jillian, do we have other speakers?
There are no other speakers, and we submitted 4 emails to be added to the transcripts.
Thank you. We appreciate that. With no other participants in the queue, we will now close the public comment period. There's no information from external entities this month, so we're going to go directly to recommended actions. Oh, let me note for the record that Director Broom has joined the meeting, and I also see Director Geisinger. Did I miss anybody that I ought to have recognized? Okay, hopefully we have everybody. There are 3 recommended actions on our agenda this evening. The first action is the Access-a-Ride and FlexRide service contracts for the Board of Directors to authorize the General Manager and CEO or her designee to enter into contracts with MTM Transit, Transdev Services, Inc., Transdev On Demand, and Via Mobility Services for the provision of Access-a-Ride and FlexRide services. These contracts are for 3 years with 2 one-year options for a total of 5 years at a total not to exceed cost of $296,433,073. Additionally, RTD will reimburse the contractor's direct fuel costs in an amount estimated to be $27,006,014 over 5 years. The total 5-year not to exceed cost for Access-a-Ride and FlexRide services and fuel is $323,439,087. Do we have a motion? Okay.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Whitmore.
Second, Rutten.
Sloan, but
You can have it.
Okay,
Sloan is
I'll-
fine.
I'll
Just-
take Sloan. I can spell it. It's shorter. I
Um,
would like,
And I don't know if this is appropriate as part of a second, but I note that we just received an email concerning this matter on the agenda. And it's difficult, to read the email and to have a considered discussion at the same time. So maybe the email could be summarized in part of the presentation. Thank you.
so Director Sloan, if you would like to read that, I'm going to ask Mr. Ford, our Chief Operations Officer, and Paul Hamilton, the Director of Paratransit Services, to give us some information. I do not have a separate screen to read the email, but when we are finished with the presentation, it comes to discussion. If you would like to read that into the record, I would be fine with that. Okay, Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Ford, Chief Operations Officer. And I am presenting information related to the Access-a-Ride and FlexRide contract renewal and award recommendations. Just for context, Access-a-Ride is RTD's federally mandated paratransit service complying with the Americans with Disabilities Act, known as the ADA. FlexRide is RTD's demand responsive microtransit service provided in 23 service areas within the district, allowing for first and last mile connections to fixed route and to essential locations within each service area to provide access to essential goods and services. 100% of the FlexRide work is performed using accessible vehicles owned by RTD. 90% of the Access-a-Ride contract services are performed using accessible vehicles also owned by RTD. The remaining 10% of the Access-a-Ride services are provided through one contract using multiple taxi vendors. Access-a-Ride services comprise approximately 70% of the service provided to paratransit customers, with the remaining 30% provided by Access on-Demand service providers. Access on-Demand service agreements were separately awarded in November, this past November, are not part of this recommended action, so I just wanted to emphasize that. Contracts for both Access-a-Ride and FlexRide in June 30th of this year. This past December, RTD issued a request for proposal competitive procurement to provide technical and price proposals for 6 packages. 4 service packages for Access-a-Ride were available as 2 25% service packages, 1 40% service package, and 1 10% service package. 2 service packages for FlexRide were also available as 2 50% service packages. After a 1-month open solicitation period, proposals were received from 6 vendors. A panel of subject matter experts reviewed all proposals, ranking each using objective criteria, including service approach, technical, staff expertise, and costs. An additional pass-fail review was conducted to assure disadvantaged business enterprise, known as DBE, participation. Based on the scoring criteria, the panel is making the following recommendations to award 3 of the 6 companies. First being Transdev for 65% of the dedicated and 10% of the non-dedicated Access-a-Ride service 3 packages. MTM for 25% of the dedicated Access-a-Ride service, 1 service package. And finally, VIA for 100% of the FlexRide services, 2 service packages. So at this time, I'm happy to take questions, and I would invite Paul Hamilton, our Director of Paratransit Services, to join me.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. I see Director Rosenthal and Director Sloan. I'm going to let Director Sloan go first, Director Rosenthal. And Director Sloan, if you want to speak to the email that you referenced, now would be the time.
It is, because I realized that I was not clear when I was speaking before, but this email has come from John McKay in the GM CEO's office. It's quite lengthy, and it has provided some background on questions that were raised earlier today. And because it's difficult to read and participate at the same time, I was hoping, and I see our great GM CEO has her hand up, and maybe she can resolve my dilemma here. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, you have the floor. I'm sorry, Director Rosenthal, hang in there.
No, thank you very much, Director Solon, and thank you, Chair Williams. I wanted to point out that John McKay sent a communique out on my behalf, recognizing that we've been in meetings all day long, and I just saw that email just a little while ago and had staff compile information. I do want to acknowledge that Dana Steele is on the line. She serves as our Director of Contracts and Procurement and can address more specifically, instead of reading the email, the process relative to solicitation. So I wanted to offer that up, as I did receive inquiries from Director Rusha relative to the procurement process and what might be available, recognizing what staff has asked, which is to authorize me in my capacity as the General Manager and CEO to enter a contract. And just wanted to take the opportunity to provide greater information. So, Madam Chair, if you would indulge, we could have Ms. Steele sort of summarize that information, if that would be advantageous. So I just wanted to acknowledge Ms. Steele and her involvement with this process and her role here at the organization.
Okay, thank you for that input. Director Rosenthal, can you wait, or does your question need to go first?
Most certainly can wait. I'd love to hear from Ms. Steele. Thank you.
Okay, as I think we all would. Dana Steele, you have the floor if you want to talk, or do you want to just wait and answer questions as they arise?
Good evening. This is Dana Steele, Director of Contracting and Procurement. I'm happy to answer questions or proceed, Director Williams, in whichever way you prefer. I can summarize the email, or I can wait and respond to questions.
Why don't you give us a brief overview, and then we will have some more questions.
Okay. And to be clear, the overview of the procurement process generally of this particular solicitation.
My understanding is that we have policies that apply across the board, and that they would have been applied to this solicitation as they are to all. So at the moment, let us speak in general terms.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Yes, this solicitation was put out on the street in accordance with RTD's standard practices and our procurement standard manual policies. As such, we convened an evaluation panel to review the proposals that were submitted to this solicitation that were deemed responsive as a threshold analysis. That panel performed a technical review of all of the proposals, submitting their scoring and recommendations. That process was overseen by RTD's most senior purchasing agent, who does not perform a scoring, but ensures the integrity of that process. After the technical proposals were scored, the purchasing agent then provides the cost information. So the cost information is held back during the technical proposal so as not to potentially influence the evaluation of the technical proposals on their merits. The cost is then tabulated into the evaluation scoring. The purchasing agent then comes up with a final score, and recommendations are made to the requesting department, in this case, the paratransit department.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to try to answer any more detailed questions.
No, I think that was a well-spoken overview, and now I will allow questions, and stick around for a bit. You may need to answer some more. You might want to mute yourself in the meantime, however. Director Rosenthal, the most patient fellow, you're up.
I'm patient sometimes. Thank you, Madam Chair. So hopefully this is an appropriate question, but who actually is on that panel? And if you can't say names of individuals, kind of, is it like, you know, people who report to senior management? Does it include senior management? I mean, so, you know, maybe individuals or levels of individuals.
Madam Chair?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ford.
Yes, that panel comprises 2 paratransit staff, 1 paratransit eligible staff in maintenance, 1 in flex ride, 1 from the disadvantaged business enterprise as well, and a procurement person.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. And then my next question is, in terms of the amount, is it more than the last contract, less, about the same? Are we, so let's start there.
I think whoever wants to take that, Mr. Ford, Ms. Steele, Mr. Hamilton.
Madam Chair, Michael Ford, Chief Operating, I would probably defer to Mr. Hamilton on that question.
And I don't know if she would have this information available. This is Paul Hamilton, Senior Manager of Paratransit Services. But the ICE that we would have provided, or the independent cost estimate, would have established what we saw as a trend for increase. And we absolutely saw an increase in costs, in large part, even during the 6-month extension that we're now under due to labor cost increases. But I could not recite for you exactly what that cost is. Dana might have that information available, and we could certainly, if not, get that information for you.
Thank
Okay.
you. And then one final one is, are we actually getting any increase in service with the increase in how much we're paying, or is it just about the same amount of service that we're going to get? And it's going to cost more.
Madam Chair, Michael Ford, Chief Operations
Yes,
Officer.
Mr. Ford. Go ahead.
Yes, I would also like to have Paul Hamilton weigh in on that question, please.
Certainly. And in that case, there actually is a slight decrease from our current or past contract in accessoride services. It's about the same for flex ride as it was before, but the accessoride services have seen a decrease in the provision of service due to the increase in demand for access on demand. It's one of the reasons that COO Michael Ford mentioned the fact that we now see close to 30% of all trip demand for our paratransit customers coming from the utilization of our 4 vendors that were approved in November of last year for access on demand.
Super. I think that's good news. Okay, I think also Director Rusha has been very patient. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being patient while I found the mute button, unmute. So I just wanted to clarify about the panel that was convened. I think this is for whomever can answer, that the panel was convened of staff, but there was nobody from our paratransit advisory committee part of that process. And is that something, is that how we traditionally execute these contracts? So I guess that's a 2-part question, clarification and follow-up.
Mr. Ford?
Yeah, Madam Chair, we are utilizing our subject matter experts as part of this process. So they would normally be involved in these type of arrangements. We have used folks from other of the paratransit groups for other types of evaluations, for lack of better words, but this was left to staff who are very competent in this area to address issues of this nature.
Thank you, sir. Director Rusha, was there more to your question or another question?
No, thank you.
I see Dana Steele, you have your hand up, and Deborah Johnson, hand up, hand down. Woo, okay, I'm paying attention. Go ahead, Ms. Steele.
This is Dana Steele, Director of Contracting and Procurement. I believe there's no outstanding question, so maybe I was premature in raising my hand. If there's any follow-up you would like on that selection process, I'm happy to try to provide that.
Super, stand by. I see Chair Geisinger has her hand up.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You know, I followed this process a little bit, and I know that you reached a different conclusion in September. And as I understand it, told the parties that that they would be getting the contract, and in particular, VIA, which has been providing the 25% of the services for years. It is a Boulder located nonprofit, but they provide services throughout Denver and Adams County and other places as well, I think. And were awarded the contract in September, and then I guess MV appealed, and they were not given the contract for Access-a-Ride in February. And I'm just wondering what changed.
Madam Chair, Michael Ford.
Mr. Ford.
Yeah, just in terms of that, obviously we did have a protest. We decided to rebid this contract and solicit new proposals through the work of the evaluation committee. There was different pieces of work, as I mentioned before, that was submitted, and it's the responsibility of the proposals to address the type of work and the scope of work that we've put out for a response. And the committee made a determination of what services were best addressed based on the scoring and the criteria that we talked about earlier. So I imagine the change happened and the responsiveness of their proposals. I would also defer to Mr. Hamilton to elaborate any more than I just stated.
Mr. Hamilton.
Certainly. Paul Hamilton, Senior Manager of Paratransit Services. The only major thing that changed between the first instance of the RFP and the second was that we had additional proposers. And given that we have a competitive procurement process, we obviously had additional proposals to look through.
Director Geisinger.
Okay, do we consider in the process, you know, our strategic goal of community value for a company, a nonprofit that has stepped up, you know, with the Senior Resource Center pulled out its paratransit, and Dr. Cog was looking around and I think having a hard time finding someone. VIA stepped up, and they've done that repeatedly. And, you know, I followed up with them, and I think they're ready to step up if things go wrong with this contract. But, you know, it seems to me like that would be a valid criterion. Is that something we consider?
Mr. Hamilton, Mr. Ford.
Actually, I'll ask another half of that, which is they're also electrifying and doing a good job of it. Do we consider sustainability as one of our criteria? Because it may be something that we should think about if we don't. Both of those.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Ford.
No, I mentioned the criteria that was used from the technical to, you know, the other areas that we mentioned previously. We probably did not look at the sustainability as part of that criteria, as I mentioned, and maybe that's something we can look at for the future. Mr. Hamilton, did you have anything else to add to that?
I did not.
What about the community value?
If I may, Paul Hamilton, Senior Manager of Paratransit Services. To that point, there were many technical components that were a part of the scoring criteria, but there wasn't anything specific, Director Geisinger, to the point that you were making of saying, are they making efforts within the community, or are they a nonprofit, or any of the other things you mentioned, which are certainly valuable to the community. Those weren't part of the scoring criteria.
Director Geisinger.
That's it for right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Rusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a follow-up regarding the contracts. It sounds like these contracts, well, can I get clarification? Are they written or not written yet? And what I see in this email to the board that arrived after the meeting started is that, quote, both winning and non-winning contract proposals are only subject to open records review once the contract is executed, unquote. I am not familiar with government agencies that have oversight bodies that that don't vote on contracts or can't see them. So I would just like to get a better understanding of what information is and is not available to the board before we vote to authorize over $300 million.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ford.
I would defer to Dana Steele. Maybe you could help with that question and elaborate.
Yes, this is Dana Steele, Director of Contracting and Procurement, and I'm happy to try to answer that. I may have to backtrack a little bit to make sure I'm clear on the question, but what we do is, as part of the solicitation, we publish the form of contract as well as what we are, the evaluators consider the evaluative criteria that they're going to be scoring the proposals on. In that solicitation packet is, as I said, the form of contract, and that's essentially the terms and conditions that we're asking the selected vendors to agree to. What then, after the evaluators make their determination, then in this case, we take this to the board and we ask the board to approve RTD entering into the contract. The next stage then is, and I will just step back a moment because I think this is important for Director Geisinger. We don't actually make award. So technically, MV wasn't awarded back in September. They were provided a notice of intent to award, and that notice of intent to award is subject to both, in this case, board approval as well as successful contract negotiation. So what we term that is they weren't awarded, they were provided a notice of intent to award. I know that's a subtle distinction, but that's important for us. Once we obtain the board approval, in this case, if it is granted, we would then go back to the contractors, take that form of contract out of the solicitation and submit that with the moving parts and pieces, you know, the percentages, the pricing, and then we would submit that back to the contractors. So no, we don't have contracts yet. We have a template form of contract that we publish so that the vendor, you know, the bidders, the potential vendors know what would be expected of them. And then we fill in the blanks, like I said, with the appropriate pricing, percentages, et cetera, in this case. That is what we are asking the board to approve, is those forms of contracts. And until those are signed, that's when we consider the contracts actually awarded. Because if for some reason a contractor determined that they weren't no longer interested or something happened, that's one of the, you know, we would not have, we haven't awarded the contract. We're still pending and we could change. So if things didn't work out, we could shift some of the percentages and some of the other contracts to maybe other vendors if that's the case. I hope that answers your question. And if not, please let me know.
Thank you for that. Director Rusha.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a clarifying question. So I guess I want to make sure that I understood what you just shared. The template for the contract is a publicly available document. So if we were to dig on RTD's website, we could find it. But you said I think you said something about filling in the blanks. What goes into the blanks, this is confidential information and not subject to public disclosure. What I'm trying to understand is why the board cannot vote on even a draft of a contract before it's executed. Why can't we see those details?
This is Dana Steele, Director of Contracting and Procurement, if I may try to answer that question. Well, it boils down to maintaining the integrity of the procurement process. The technical proposals has confidential information at this point. If for some reason we were able to disclose that pricing in this process to the board, we could never go back. If one of those contracts failed or if something happened, we could never go back. We'd have to start the process from scratch again, because that pricing that is currently blind to the other vendors would then be available, and we would have to start from scratch again, and we would have even bigger problems. So we don't release pricing and proposals until after we have the contract award. We have general information that's provided. We have large numbers, we have percentages, but we don't drill down into how they came up. We don't release the proposals themselves until after to preserve that integrity of the process.
Thank you, Ms. Steele. Director Rusha, did that help?
I don't think that satisfies my concern, but I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'd like to take chair's privilege and speak for just a minute. One of the things that I hear being discussed here is dollar value, and there is no dollar value on community service, as we've discussed earlier. I think that everybody here knows that I spent many years working in the field of older adults and persons with disabilities, and VIA Mobility is highly prized, respected, dependable. It's almost inconceivable to me that we would not seek to partner with them for their intangibles more than anything else. That's not to say that any of the other vendors are not valid entities, but I think that we need to take a look at who we support and the criteria that we want to bring forward to our constituents. That's all I have to say on the matter. Anybody else that would like to give input? Director Geising, Chair.
Thank you. I agree with those comments, and I guess I appreciate your comments, Ms. Steele, on the process. I am concerned about getting, and I understand the contracting issues and all of that, but getting, the request to approve $323 million on contracts without any real previous information about the process and the criteria and all of those things, I find disturbing. I don't vote tonight, but I may be a no vote at the board meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Geisinger. Director Rusha, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize because I do not want to take up the air in the Zoom room. And so if I'm speaking out of order, please correct me. I don't know if we're still in questions or just comment. I did want to share a final comment I had on the proposal before us, if I may.
Absolutely. Have at it.
Okay, thank you, Chair Williams. So I 100% support high quality paratransit services like Director Williams. This has also been part of my work, and I make no comment, no negative comment on any of the potential vendors that we have before us. I think they all provide value. But I will be a no today as a matter of principle. I am not convinced that all of this information is proprietary based on previous experience. These are contracts we can't see. We got an email after the board meeting started, which as Director Sloan mentioned, we don't have time to fully analyze and process and ask these follow-up questions. This is $323 million for up to 5 years of service. These are federally mandated services. They're incredibly important contracts. I personally just don't have enough information today. And I'm hoping that in the time between now and our March board meeting, there is opportunity for more follow-up and disclosure and transparency with the board So respectfully, I will be a no vote, and it's a matter of principle and not about the topic of paratransit or providing high quality service. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I have a question, a procedural question. Director Sloan, I see your hand. If you'd hold on for just 1 second. I'd like to ask our corporate counsel, Ms. Snyder, who I do see here in the room. What happens if we don't move this out of committee?
Well, then the recommended action would fail.
And so then Director Ruscia would not have a chance to vote no at the board meeting.
That's correct.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought process. Okay, Director Sloan, Director Ruscia, did you hand down?
Yes, I'm sorry. May I ask a question of General Counsel, a follow-up?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize, but Ms. Snyder, is there when this type of situation or concern happens, is there a precedent for referring an action like this to the other committee? For example, finance, because it would give more directors time to participate, and this is a $323 million question without a contract attached. Is that something that historically has been done or can be done? I'm not making the motion, I'm asking if.
Yes, thank you for the question, Director Ruscia. So I'm only coming up on just shy of 3 years, so I can only speak to the time that I've been here, and other directors that have been here much longer, I'm sure could speak to it. I'm not aware of any precedent for that, and it doesn't really procedurally quite work. But as you know, the executive committee will take up this matter, and we'll be setting the agenda. And, you know, my understanding is sort of the custom, it's not required, but my understanding of the custom of how the board has been operating is that if a matter comes out of committee and it's not unanimous, it's automatically taken off the unanimous consent agenda, and it gives opportunity for all directors to ask questions and do so at the board meeting. So that would be another opportunity. And certainly you should know, just because a director or a committee member were to vote this matter, vote in favor of proceeding with this matter, that wouldn't predispose you to have to approve it at the board meeting. You could always change your votes if that was something you decided to do.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. I do want to note for the record that it's possible that the executive committee may override anything that happens in this committee meeting. Director Sloan, I saw your hand first.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And this is essentially a follow-up on your question, as in what happens if we do not send this to the full board. It's my understanding from the discussion today, and I'm learning, you know, at this meeting, that what we have is a notice of intent to award at this point. Is there an opportunity to change the criteria to make them more aligned with RTD's strategic plan, specifically about community value and protecting the planet? I'm pretty sure this is a legal question for General Counsel Snyder, but you know, I'm open to hearing from anyone. If this goes back, doesn't proceed to the board immediately, is there an opportunity to change the criteria? Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Melanie Snyder, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll definitely defer to Dana Steele if she has anything to add, but the answer, Director Sloan, is no. We would need to, if we were looking at changing the criteria, we would have to cancel the solicitation and repost the solicitation and start the process anew.
Okay. And I'd like to note for the record that this motion is to authorize the general manager and CEO to enter into the contracts. That is what the motion says. Director Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And given that motion, you know, and that if we do not adopt this today and it would have to go out again. My understanding of the memo was that proposals were due January 31st. So that means about 5 weeks that it has taken to process and put this together. So if we either vote no or we delay, then my understanding of the memo as well is that it would be June. I'm looking at the memo again, June 30th before the expiration of the services. So we would technically have time, but that would be cutting it short.
Thank you for that. Anybody have comment? Oh, I got all kinds of people now. Hold on. Is there anybody from staff that wants to speak to Director Rosenthal's statement, or shall we just go on?
Just Michael Ford, that would create some challenges given the timelines and having to allow for vendors coming in to set themselves up to be able to deliver services. So I just would add that does create some stress, for lack of better words.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As an interloper, not a member of the committee, but one very interested in the topic as raised by Director Ruscia, I felt compelled to make a couple of observations. It needs to be remembered that this is a board of directors. This is not a board of managers. It is not a board of administrators. It is not a board of supervisors. It's a board of directors. We are here to govern the agency. We are not here to micromanage the agency. And when the request is made to have the entire finalized contract presented to the board prior to its approval, we run the risk of becoming micromanagers. The statute, our Enabling Act, prohibits us from doing that. Good governance prohibits us from doing that. Now, it is an established fact that all of the directors have not had the opportunity for a full orientation prior to their participation in the board because of challenging circumstances we encountered since their election. But it is a retreat topic that we address each year. And I would look to the chair, perhaps the board chair, to address this and to emphasize the point that it is not the function of the board of directors to say, I need to see the final form of contract before I will vote to approve it. That is not the function. And I think general counsel could weigh in on this as well. And I haven't heard that either. But I do wish to make the point for the record, just by virtue of the fact that we haven't had a chance to have a full orientation exploring all of these things, to say our job is to set the parameters and then to have staff go out and execute and implement our decisions. But it is not our job to approve every jot and tittle of a contract. And I thank you for your patience in letting me expound upon that.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. We appreciate your input. You can put your hand down now. Director Broom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, it's really important that we maintain a squeaky clean perception of bidders out there as far as when we go out to bid for various goods and services. Because if you don't, people will shy away from even bidding on it. You can't use soft and fuzzy things to determine what you should cast your vote on. You know, I'm a Rotarian, and maybe if I were on this selection group, and there's some Rotarian that had submitted a bid, well, that'd be an automatic, that I'd want to vote to give the contract to a fellow Rotarian. You just simply can't go down that road. You got to look at who's a responsible bidder. If they're responsible, then it's who's the low bidder, and that's who you award it to. And that way it's fair to everybody concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Broom. We appreciate your input. You can put your hand down too, Chair Geisinger.
Yeah, thanks very much. I totally agree that we are not a board of directors, and it's always a fine line to figure out where we set policy and how it applies in this situation. But that's why I started by asking, are we applying the criteria that we have said are important to us? The community value, sustainability, those sorts of things. And, maybe that's a question for further down the road. I'm not saying I will vote no at the board, but I also think that understanding the process before we approve $323 million in contracts is just doing our due diligence. So I guess to that extent, I don't disagree with what both of the two previous speakers are saying, but I think that the part of this is helping set the parameters. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Geisinger. Okay, I see no other hands at the moment, unless there's anyone from staff that wants to contribute anything further. I'm about to take us to a vote. Okay, here we go. Are there any no votes on this action? Let me go around and call the roll, I guess, would be the appropriate way to do this. Now, Director Bouquet, unfortunately, you're at the beginning.
Oh, I don't think unfortunate at all, but yes, I'm a yes vote.
You're a yes vote on giving our general manager and CEO the authority to enter into these contracts. Director Broom?
I'm also a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Rusha?
Respectfully, no.
Director Sloan?
I'm a yes vote on sending this on to the full board.
Director Whitmore?
Yes.
Director Rosenthal?
Yes.
I am a no vote as well. So the two no votes are Director Rusha and Director Williams. With 5 yes votes, this will move forward. Second action on our extensive agenda this evening is the May 2023. Oh, I need to note, I apologize. The motion was made by Director Whitmore and the second was Director Sloan, and then we ended up with a 5-2 vote. The May 2023 Title VI Service Equity Analysis is the second action that we will address. And it reads, for the Board of Directors to adopt the Title VI Service Equity Analysis Report for the January 2023 service changes to comply with federal laws, regulations, and guidelines related to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as well as to meet the 2021 through 2026 strategic plan priority of community values. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Sloan.
Directors Sloan, thank you. And a second?
Second, Bouquet.
Thank you, Director Bouquet. At this time, I am going to ask Carl Green, who is our director, Carl Green Jr., who is the Director of Civil Rights for RTD, to present this item. Mr. Green?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for adding the junior, and good evening, Madam Chair and fellow Board of Directors. I'll go ahead and pull up the slides. All right, good evening. So again, my name is Carl Green Jr., Director of the Civil Rights Division. And tonight I will be presenting on the May 2023 Run Board or Service Changes Equity Analysis. To give the Board of Directors an overview of what to expect during this presentation, I'll be providing a summary of the proposed service changes, the requirements as it pertains to the Federal Transit Administration, an overview of the Title VI and Service Equity Analysis as it relates to our established Title VI policies. I will then get into the policies, the methodology for conducting the analysis, the results of the route and network level analysis, as well as the conclusions. I'll provide a brief overview of the public outreach and then end with the staff recommendation. So just to give a high-level overview of the proposed service changes, as noted, there are 30 proposed service changes. 20 of them are modified services, which is providing additional trips or expanded span of hours. And there's 20 modified services. And then there's also 10 seasonal adjustments, as you can see here on the bar or the table below. Now I'll be getting into the FTA requirements as it relates to Title VI and specifically the requirements from the Federal Transit Administration. So the authority that sets the precedent for these equity analysis is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, also known as Public Law 88-352. Specifically, it is Title VI. And essentially what the quotes below the images on the screen here, essentially those are the non-discrimination requirements for entities receiving federal financial assistance. And by virtue of the Federal Transit Administration, they set forth the policy guidance for conducting analyses. And in addition to that, we have the RTD Title VI program, which I would like to highlight that the board approved back in 2022. And I will cover down on 2 items of note that expanded our assessment as it relates to these analyses. So to give you an overview, the image on the screen here provides a workflow or decision tree as it relates to the step-by-step process. So step 1 is evaluating the type of change. The change in question is our service changes. If it meets the major service change threshold, which I will describe a little bit later in the presentation, then we move to step 2, which is evaluating possible impacts on minority and low-income populations, which I'll refer interchangeably as equity populations. So in the spirit of, in the letter of Title VI, it's specifically directed towards minority and low income. And the definition of low income is at or below 150% of the federal poverty level. So as we evaluate the possible impacts, we want to ensure that we are not creating an adverse impact on these populations. And if the answer is yes to that question, we move directly to step 3, which is evaluating the alternatives, where we'll either change course or address the matter. And if there is not a disparate impact or disproportionate burden, then no further action is required. So now I'll be breaking down a little bit further on the Title VI policy. First, our major service change, disparate impact, and disproportionate burden. So as far as the major service change policy, it is a 25% increase or decrease in the service hours of any route that would remain in effect over 12 months or more. And as a result of the major service change assessment, out of these major service increases, there are 2 that met the major service change threshold out of the 30. So we're specifically looking at the 2 major service changes. So to give a more better understanding of our DI and DB policies, essentially there are established thresholds to get a better understanding of the nature of impact of the changes. So as you see the graphic on the right, this is testing for disparate impact at the system level. Essentially what this analysis provides is to ensure if we're making service increases that minority populations or equity populations are not receiving less of the benefit. Whereas on the flip side, if we're looking at major service reduction, we want to ensure that these populations are not receiving more of the potential burden. So if we look at the graphic, you can see here in the blue, on the blue chart or the blue graph or chart in the graph, there's specifically looking at non-minority population impacted. So for example's sake, if it's a 25% of the non-minority population impacted, we have to set, per our policy, there is a threshold of 10% of that 25%, which equates to 2.5%. So you can see here the non-disparity range ranging from 25% to 27.5. So if it exceeds that 27.5, it would result in a potential impact for minorities and also for low income for major service reductions. But if we're looking at major service increases, knowing that non-minority populations are receiving 25% of the benefit, we want to ensure that those equity populations are not receiving less of the benefit. So if it exceeds that 22.5%, then it would be a potential disparity for minority and/or low-income populations. So next we'll get into the methodology. As I mentioned before, the board adopted the Title VI program in 2022, back in May, and we expanded upon our route level analysis, which we did previously, and we also included a network level analysis. So we have a two-prong approach to our analysis. The route level analysis looks at each individual route. Specifically, if you look at the image on the left, that more or less provides a good understanding of the way that we do our assessment, where we look at a particular route, we put a quarter-of-a-mile buffer around that route to look at the service availability or the populations within that buffer, and specifically looking at equity populations compared to non-equity populations. We then go to our network level analysis, which is an aggregate of the major service changes. So it provides that holistic understanding of the major service changes and what the benefit and or potential burden would be to Title VI populations. So now I'll be getting into the route level results, where we can see for the Route 10, there is no potential disparate impact or no disproportionate burden. Whereas we look at the Route FF2 or the reinstatement, there is a potential disparate impact and no disproportionate burden. And I want to pause here just for a second to give a better understanding. So although there is a potential disparate impact, the second level of assessment that we move forward with is key public service assessments, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But essentially, if we look at, we're adding back service and knowing that we want to make sure that we're as equitable as we can be, knowing that there are other requirements and service standards that we need to adhere to. I would say these next couple of slides, when we talk about the key public service assessments, is something to take into consideration as we look at these route level results. So again here, the key, and I'll just from here on out name them as points of interest. So the route level and network level looks at service availability, where people reside, the neighborhood where people reside. So a lot of feedback that we received is, what about access, right? Where are people going? So another part of this assessment is looking at retail and convenience stores, educational institutions, social services, senior housing, and access to jobs. So as we look at the Route 10 specifically, we can see that the route extension on the right side of the table, it provides new access to a number of jobs, grocers, social service centers, senior housing, and academic institutions. Whereas we see that it also maintains access. So as we're increasing service and as we're adding span of hours, it also maintains access to these key points of interest. So then if we look at the Route FF2, it also improves access, given the reinstatement, to a number of jobs, grocers, and these other points of interest, which is of high value as we think about when we're bringing back service. We want to make sure that we're equitable as possible, but we're also increasing access to where people need to go. So I also wanted to highlight the public outreach overview. We heard a couple of comments earlier in the board meeting, and just wanted to highlight here that we had open houses on February 21st and the 22nd for a total of 3 virtual meetings. And I also wanted just to highlight here, as an added level of outreach, specifically the Transit Equity Office reached out to about 68 community-based organizations and key public service destinations to provide notification and awareness of these changes, specifically for the Route 10. and the FF2. So I just wanted to let you all know that as we think about our engagement, this is just another added value to ensure that we are connecting with the populations that we are serving. So next I'll be getting into the network level results. Just wanted to make note that minority populations received slightly lower increase in service or were impacted slightly less compared to non-minority populations. But as you can see on the first sub-bullet of 1, it's only a 0.11%. And if you, and in accordance with our disparate impact threshold, that 10%, it does not exceed the disparate impact threshold. So there's not a high level of concern regarding Title VI. And then next I'll get into the low-income populations where they received a greater service increase. So they were impacted more, or positively impacted more compared to non-low income. And that was a net positive of 1.67% for these populations. So the conclusion is, if we look at from a holistic standpoint of the 2 major service changes, we can see that they serve an above average for low-income populations compared to the service district average of 14.3%. And in totality, equity populations were positively impacted slightly more, and there are no system level adverse impacts. And at this point, it is staff's recommendation for the board to approve the May 2023 Title VI service equity analysis. And I will now open up the floor for any questions that the board of directors may have.
Thank you, Carl. That was an amazing presentation. Okay, I see there are hands up already. Director Rosenthal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Green. And, I guess with my questions, I'm not trying to use the term used earlier. I'm trying not to manage the project that you just put together, but at the same time, just sort of open questions about it. So if I look at the maps that are, let's just say for the 10, it cuts off where it starts or ends as you see it at the Colfax Federal Transit Center. And so that is a pretty underserved population, and yet now it's no longer being served there. And so I'm wondering, about that piece.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I would like to call upon Jesse Carter to talk specifically about the Route 10.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having some issues with my video, so I apologize for the camera not working. But at this point, in trying to understand Director Rosenthal's question, the current routing of the Route 10 ends at Colfax and Federal. So I'm not sure if he's interpreting the proposal as being an extension, where the extension actually occurs is further east, going to Colfax and Billings. So it's not a change to the existing western terminal of the Route 10.
I guess I must be reading this wrong. It says proposed May 23 discontinued routing, and it's in red, and it starts off at the Colfax Federal Transit Center, and then it goes all the way to lower downtown near Union Station. So all that is in red, and it all says discontinued. So I guess I'm starting with that area.
Okay.
And then it says current routing unchanged is the light blue, where it starts at Union Station, then goes further southeast and then east.
Okay, Director Rosenthal, I apologize. I think what you're looking at is the Reimagine RTD System Optimization Plan information. And that is when if you were to consider the services prior to the pandemic, that would have been the Route 10. But I'm happy to go through a more thorough discussion of what's in the operations systems optimization study, sorry about that, with you at some time to kind of explain the entire document. But as the service stands right now, we start at the basically Colfax and Federal station and extends. The actual proposal for May 23 was to extend it to Colfax and Billings rather than end it at Delmar in the Aurora area. So that is the primary proposal at this point. And again, I offer a phone call or a meeting to kind of explain it to you further.
Okay, it doesn't say anything here about Reimagine RTD. It says service change May 2023. It's page 70. And it's in our packet, so I guess I don't understand. But then going east, as you indicated, so I can see why it would want to go to Colfax and Billings because you've got Anschutz there. But then it does cut off the route going along 6th Avenue. So are there any other buses that would be slated then to go along 6th Avenue to make up for that, or to reroute to make sure that those folks are taken care of, or that's just eliminated service for them?
The Route 6 is in that area, so it's actually eliminating some duplication.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. And thank you. And again, my apologies. I will give you a call tomorrow to kind of go over, because it is terribly confusing when we were talking about the Reimagine process and moving forward with some of these other changes. So I do want to make sure it's understood clearly that our stepping off point going forward is both in recognition of what the board adopted in July of 2022, and at the same time moving forward to make adaptations to what was in that overall plan.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Director Rusha.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't realize I was not on mute. I had a question for Mr. Green, I think. In defining our major service changes definitions and our impact definitions, I understand those are policies and things that were adopted by the board. But can you explain, are these baseline numbers set by the FTA or by us, and how do we come up with that formula?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yes, that's a great question, Director Rusha. I would say it's a multifaceted approach as far as establishing the major service change or the DI/DB policies. And essentially what we, as Title VI professionals, will do an assessment of what other transit agencies are putting forth as their DI/DB and major service change policy, just to get a better understanding of what thresholds they are putting forth and what they're utilizing, to see where we stand as an agency. From there, we then go to public comment and outreach for the public to help inform those said policies. And then we meet with service development and just staff around the agencies to go, what are the potential unintended consequences or the impacts as it relates to service standards and so forth. But with equity in mind, as we look at the populations that we are serving, currently right now, those are the policies that meet the moment as it relates to Title VI policy. And then to your point, the board does adopt these policies, and the next update to the program will be in 2025. So we can look at making any changes at that time.
Thank you, sir. Director Rusha, you good?
Yeah, I do have a separate question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this might be for the next item on the agenda, so please correct me if I'm out of order. I just wanted to know, when we are performing an equity analysis or service change analysis, do we also in our community engagement process reach out to paratransit riders or organizations that might represent them, because if we change fixed route, we might inadvertently eliminate their right to paratransit service. And again, if this is for the next presentation, I apologize.
Well, who wants to take that one on? I think I can answer it, but anybody? Mr. Ford?
I would probably want to defer that to Mr. Carter.
Mr. Carter, there you are.
I found a way to make my camera work, so thank you. Thank you, Director. I'm sorry. Thank you, Chair. And basically, as far as our stakeholder process, we do reach out and offer an opportunity to comment on not just the service change, but just a basic question to the community of how we're doing. That stakeholder process actually precedes our public hearing process. However, it should be noted that all of our public meetings are, again, available to the public at large. And yes, we understand that when we have, especially in the case of major service reductions, we do make a larger effort to reach out to communities that may be impacted. This service change itself right now, as far as May 2023, was not a major service change in terms of reducing service. So we didn't have that need to do something special as if we were turning down our service levels on major routes that do affect folks aboard who may have disabilities. We would have made that type of outreach effort. But at the same time, I have to say this to remind myself and not just the board. Many of our customers who use regular fixed route transit are disabled as well. So even though paratransit may be impacted by the offering of the service because it's predicated upon the existence of the fixed route service, we have to take very close recognition that there are people who have disabilities who use all of our service, fixed route as well. So I'm hoping that addresses your question.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Director Rusha, you good?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Carter, for that explanation and that acknowledgement.
Mr. Green, I saw your hand up earlier. You good too?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions or comments before we move forward? Hearing none, I have Director Sloan as the movement and Director Bouquet as the second. Are there any no votes on this action? Okay, seeing none, that motion passes with 7 votes, and we'll go on to the rest of us. And the final action we have tonight is the May 2023 service change. The action reads for the Board of Directors to approve the May 2023 service changes as revised and summarized in attachment A, and to authorize the general manager and CEO or her designee to execute contract amendments as necessary for private operators impacted by these changes. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Sloan.
Rosenthal, second.
And Rosenthal. Again, I'm going to ask Mr. Ford, our Chief Operations Officer, and Mr. Carter, who we can now see, the Senior Manager of Service Development, to present this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Ford, Chief Operations Officer. Last month, I reported to the board about the proposed May 2023 service change. And as you know, staff brings to you 3 service change proposals over the course of a year's time for discussion and subsequent recommendations, which is in alignment with the collective bargaining agreement known as the CBA with Amalgamated Transit Union, the ATU, Local 1001, for frontline operator selection of work, commensurate with the RTD system optimization plan, which facilitates an interest in increasing service. This exercise is done in conjunction with RTD's resources, which then dictates the level of service increases modifications, and/or adjustments needing to be executed for the upcoming service change. By way of this discussion, the guidelines contained in the strategic plan most directly relate to addressing customer excellence, thus improving on-time performance, maintaining contractual compliance, and adjusting service levels to match service and ridership demand. Staff is guided by the board-adopted service principles. And in your board packet, you will see a breakdown summary of proposed service changes, service improvements, service reductions, and seasonal adjustments to account for travel patterns. Also in your packet is a complete breakdown of the proposed service changes and the results of the virtual public hearings that took place on February 20th, 2023 at noon and February 21st, 2023 at noon and at 5:30 p.m. With that, I am happy to answer questions, and I would invite Mr. Carter, our Senior Manager of Service Development, to join me in answering questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. I do not see any hands. Is there anyone who has questions or comments regarding service changes? Okay. I guess you guys are off the hook. If there are no questions or comments further, I would like to see with Director, I'm using my notes. I think I have Sloan and Rosenthal as the movement in the second. Are there any no votes on this action? Hearing none, that motion passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda are discussion items, and there is one discussion item on the agenda this evening for a human resources update. I'd like to ask Charlene, oh boy, you got to tell me how to say it. Polegi. Okay. Our Chief People Officer, that part I can get out to take it from here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair Williams. Just give me a moment and I'll pull up the presentation.
While we're waiting on that, I'm just going to let you all know that toward the end of this meeting, I'm going to ask for a break. So heads up on that. We're great transit people, but we aren't always great tech people. Don't feel bad. It's okay. Not happening, huh? Perhaps you could send your presentation to somebody. Oh, you got it. Look at that. I'll be quiet. And you are muted, by the way.
And Charlene, I would say, I know you have two screens, so we see the dual screen, so you may have to swap to the other monitor. We could run down to assist you really quickly. And you're on mute, so we can't hear you, but
It's great. We are encountering temporary.
John McKay is on his way down to help you really quickly. I can hear him next door.
Thank you, Ms.
Awesome.
Bell.
I've got myself off mute and I will.
John is on his way.
Awesome. My apologies.
That's right. We're happy to see your background. It's small, but we can see it.
You can see all my stuff. Okay. That's not good.
No, it's fun. It's fun. So do you want to give us a little quick summary while Mr. McKay is making reparations to your presentation?
Yes, I can totally do that. So I'm just pausing my share. What I'm here to present, so my name is Charlene Pelegi. It's Pelegi. You'll probably remember that now. I would like to start by saying I am the Chief People Officer, and my pronouns are she and her. And I just wanted to take a moment to share that, because I think it's really important that we model that action for the LGBTQ plus community and get into the habit of identifying ourselves. So with that, this presentation I'm going to be presenting this evening is just a high-level overview of human resources and our activities this evening, my door's locked. Our accomplishments, things that we have experienced and been able to accomplish in the last few months. I've been here since December of 2022. And so with that, much of what I'm going to share with you today has already been put into place through others. It's not as easy as you think, right? I know my computer's been very weird. John's working on it. I had paused the screen sharing. And so we're going to start off with what I'm going to cover tonight will be people power. We're going to give an overview of our people power, some insights into the numbers of employees that we employ at RTD. Then also, we're really going to focus in on two key areas, so recruitment and retention at RTD, and some of our recent tactics and some successes that we're seeing that are trending to continue in 2023. In these first few months. And then I'm going to take a small little bit of time at the end just to give an overview of looking forward. And I'll be coming back. This will be a regular, I believe we're targeting for a quarterly update or so to give you some insight into our journey on developing an employee-centric culture. Right? It's okay. So I feel a little bit validated that John is also having some challenges. So our apologies, both of us. So if we're talking about people power, and I'm going to just keep progressing if you don't mind. What I'd like to say to start is that at RTD, first off, we have an incredibly diverse talent pool. We have from bus and rail operators, telephone information support, as well as mechanics, maintenance, IT, human resources, legal, excuse me. And frankly, there are so many that I'm sure I'm missing. We have a significant safety component of professional civil rights. And why I highlight that is because that's critically important, because while it increases the challenges in recruitment and the competition for talent, it also has the opportunity for great growth and potential within RTD. So we have a diverse organization where we can promote and retain and actually help individuals have a career, not just a job, but actually have a career at RTD. I know I have too many screens. So with that, again, moving on, in 2022 compared to 2001, maybe could we share it with someone? Yeah. Compared to 2022, 2021. In 2022, RTD hired 708 new employees into the organization. We saw a 43% increase in applicant traffic. So interest in RTD has increased. And in the first 2 months of this year, that increase is holding. Actually, I think we're sitting at about close to a 50% increase over the same 2 months last year. That said, I would say it's not a growth year, it is a year of recovery. Certainly, we needed to recover from the impact. Thank you, John. We needed to recover from the impact of the pandemic. And so that's largely what we're seeing. What's positive is that we are continuing to see this trend of interest in RTD with applicants. And However, with 708 new hires in 2022, we also had 401 separations. The majority of those separations, yes. So the majority of those separations were voluntary. And also it's interesting, it's of those 401, only 5%, we do engage in exit interviews, and we seek to ascertain the reasons why individuals would be choosing to separate from RTD. Only 5% of those, thank you. I'm on slide 5. Only 5% of those indicated that they did not like the job. So they were dissatisfied with their job. The greater portion was the greater rationale was compensation. So feeling that our compensation was not competitive, and opportunities, other opportunities and other jobs. The competition for talent.
Excuse me, Charlene, I
Yes.
apologize for the interruption. I was just notified that Stuart Summers is going to help you with your presentation because we're still seeing dual slides in the and so forth. So there you go. It's there.
Perfect.
All right. Teamwork makes the dream work. Thanks for your patience, everybody.
And she was doing a great job just talking through it. I'm fine.
I do apologize. Like I said, I had my computer was going on the fritz while when the meeting was going on, so I kept coming in, coming out. So my apologies. That said, the competition for talent is fierce. It's we're out competing with organizations all across Denver and in the state. Next slide, please. So what does that look like for us here at RTD? Well, we've made significant strides in our recruitment efforts. The challenge that we still have is that, as you can see, is we still have some significant positions where we have higher than desired, wanted vacancy rates. So while we've made good progress with our bus operators, full and part-time, and our rail operators, in fact, the rail operators, part-time rail operators, we don't have any vacant positions there, but we do have positions ranging from 30 to 40% vacancy rate. And that is an area where our hope is with our talent acquisition and some of the initiatives that we have ongoing that will continue to make some strides there. What I will also say is that as a team, we are working with our everything you'll hear tonight is a collaboration. As Deborah said, teamwork makes the dream work. Nothing is done on its own in isolation in HR. And so we are looking at building specific plans for hiring and or trying to attract to these key positions. Next slide, please. So when we look at talent acquisition, next slide, thanks. What have we seen? We, prior to my arrival, and very grateful for that, the talent acquisition team was doubled in size to address the recruitment needs. And that has allowed the recruiters to really focus on and make some headway, as we saw in the previous slide. We're also now seeing that some departments are returning to near or fully staffed. I can tell you, I was part of an email chain recently where the leader of a department was saying for the first time in a few years, they were fully staffed and how excited they were. And we are seeing that. That's not to convey that we are anywhere near being fully staffed, given that if you take our current vacant positions and our projected turnover, that would equal recruiting. We would have 950 positions based on budget, which would equal roughly about 80 positions would need to be filled per month. So it's significant, good progress, but we still have a ways to go yet. So a couple of the things that we're looking and have enacted and are pushing out, one is employee referral. So RTD, we reactivated our employee referral program, and we've seen great success actually with that in every orientation. a significant portion, not quite 50%, but around 30 to 40% are coming through employee referrals, which is great. I think we all know that generally speaking, an individual that is referred by employee is often has an understanding of the organization in which they're going into, and the employee, the individual themselves, take pride in who they would be referring. So we want to keep supporting that program. As well, we have, excuse me, we also have, to address the challenge before us, we're doing some specific diversity and veteran outreach programs. And I think what I wanted to say here is, if we were to summarize the true challenge that we have before us, is that we need to attract significant numbers of specialized skills in a very short period of time. And once they're hired, getting them into the door is just the first part. The next part is giving them an experience and an opportunity in a career that they then choose to stay at RTD. And I share that because that is an overarching principle for us in HR here and in our recruitment efforts, because if we can do that, then we can be uniquely positioned to be again, like the leading multimodal transportation authority in the country, because we are people moving people. So that's why you'll see the focus is on talent acquisition. And in the coming updates, you'll see talent acquisition and retention, because those are our two primary areas. Next slide, please. So one of the areas that just launched here at the end of February is a partnership with eQuest. And eQuest is a national job posting and compliance portal. And what's great about eQuest is we now have the opportunity and the ability to, in real time, take our postings and push them across multiple sites. And on the right of the screen is just, it's 6 of over 100 different agency, community-based organizations, job boards that we will now be able to post in real time on all of these sites. Additionally, we have the ability with eQuest to start tracking our community outreach. And so whether that be and you'll see some of this campaigns that are done in collaboration with the communications and marketing team led by Stuart Summers, or work that you'll also see that's being led in partnership with the civil rights team with Carl Green Jr. is we will be able to track all of that in real time, and then eventually get to the, once we have enough data, be able to assess what has worked well from our recruitment perspectives and where we need to make adjustments. And in HR terms, we'd be looking to see applicant conversion rates. We're not there yet. It just launched in February, but we're really excited about this opportunity, this partnership. Next slide. Thank you. So as I was saying, we do work in collaboration. Gabe Christie, who is our manager of ADA under the Civil Rights Division, is leading a Persons with Disabilities partnership. I've had the pleasure of being invited to also participate in this partnership as well. And we, one of the key initiatives that they've already had underway is we're collaborating with external subject matter experts to look at opportunities within RTD that may not have been presence of mind. So one of those would be in the Telephone Information Center. We started exploring whether there were opportunities for persons with visual impairments. And so on the surface, one might think, can someone with a visual impairment be able to give someone on the phone directions, what bus to take? And the answer is yes. We've actually been able to ascertain that yes, we can. We need appropriate technologies and supports. But yes, so that work is ongoing. We've identified some shortcomings with our systems, but none of those shortcomings appear to be insurmountable. So now we're working on identifying mitigation strategies so that the intention would be so that we can actually hire persons with visual impairments in our telephone information center and potentially other areas within RTD. But more importantly, it's a great example of what we can do when we just work collaboratively with partnerships outside of RTD and have an open mind to the potential of what's possible. Next slide. So another initiative that is launching here in March, and this is the one in collaboration with Stuart Summers' team, is a military campaign. And so this is a specifically targeted campaign that actually was created with input from current RTD employees who are veterans. So Kevin Emery, who you see there, is an RTD employee, and they have been involved in the work of this development of this program so that it can speak directly to veterans who are transitioning out of a career in service to their country and potentially into a career in service to the communities to which RTD serves. We're developing a a dedicated military careers page, as well as engaging partnerships with the 4 bases that we have within the local area to identify opportunities within RTD and to try to create a seamless transition for in particular, some of those key positions we were talking about in maintenance of way, mechanics, very highly skilled positions in which our veterans may be very well suited. Next slide, please. So we talked about bringing people in, and now we need to talk about retaining. So as I indicated previously, before the slides were working, but that majority of those who chose of those 401 who chose who separated, the majority of those who voluntarily chose to leave noted compensation and other job opportunities. So RTD has made great strides with respect to compensation. When I quote those numbers, those are from 2022. So certainly at the end of 2023, we're going to keep looking at that data. But there was movement within the collective bargaining agreement, as well as cost of living increases that bring RTD's compensation to be market competitive. We're not the market leader, but we are market competitive. We are no longer the market lag. We need to continue on that work, and we need to stay on that work so that we can stay competitive. And so there are under GM Johnson, this will be a regular review so that we can stay on top of that. And as I said, in 2023, we'll see, hopefully we'll see a needle move with respect to retention, and in particular, people choosing to leave because of compensation. The other part is training and development. So as I said, helping individuals see that you can have a career here. Well, we have a lot of different and diverse positions. We are going to be working with our training and development team, which is now fully staffed. That is one of those areas that is fully staffed, and we're happy about that. And the first order of business was the development of a learning and development framework. Why is that important? Because it's through that learning and development framework that we can help individuals progress from one career to another by providing training internal to RTD instead of seeking talent, only looking for talent external to the agency. So next slide, if we could. So just wanted to share with you the learning and development framework that we now have at RTD. This learning and development framework, the key here is that we're looking to identify opportunities for the RTD workforce that exists today, and then prepare them for the roles that they may wish and that we will need in the agency tomorrow. So it starts, it's a circle, it's cyclical. You'll find, although this is my first presentation to the committee, you'll find I provide a lot of circles in my demonstrations, and that's because that is the cycle. Everything is the employee life cycle, and it ties back, and you don't just do it once and then don't do it again. You need to do it You need to design it, identify the need, align it to our strategic plan, design the training plan. So how are we going to get there? Assess where we're at, deliver that training, implement what we've learned in that training, and then follow up. So was it the right training? Did the training stick? Is it providing what we needed? And then we assess it. And then we do it all over again. It's an ongoing basis. So I'm really happy to have a manager of learning and development on board. Excuse me. And one of the first programs that was used using institutional design, training design, next slide, please, was performance management training. This was a gap that was identified before my arrival, certainly. This was the first delivery under that framework, was a performance management training. This was for salaried managers with direct reports. And there were two components to this training. One was an overall training on performance management, how to, and then there was an additional training on SMART goals. So setting SMART goals. So SMART, for those of you, it's, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, right? That's really important because when you develop a SMART goal, you're able then to give, as a leader, feedback. Real constructive feedback that will help me perform better. So that was also created. With the performance management training, we had a 75% attendance rate. There were in-person and virtual sessions, and you can see the number of attendees was highest in the in-person, which is great. So we had 128 attendees, and the 4.08, pardon me, out of 5 assessment. We will be assessing all of our training, as I said, for value. If people are going to take their time to participate, we want to make sure that they feel that that is valued. Specifically, one of the key things, the overwhelming majority of respondents, greater than 80%, stated that the topics covered in the training were relevant to me and my role. And so again, if we're going to take time away from the day-to-day to engage in training, we want to make sure that it's valuable to the participants. Next slide, please. So didn't show you a lot on training and development because it's new and we're just getting started. But some of the key things that we're going to be developing, there will be a follow-up or supplemental training for all employees around performance management, so that all employees have an opportunity to understand how their performance will be assessed and their engagement in that process, as well as planning is underway for a supervisory and management training program, which will have a number of modules within it, as well as other training that we're collaborating with in other departments within the agency. So looking forward or moving forward, what I'm showing you here is another circle, as I said, but this is around creating an employee-centric culture. So GM Johnson was very clear with me when we were engaging in discussions about me joining RTD around her commitment to developing an employee-centric organization. So that is not, that is more than just, I want to develop an employee-centric organization. That takes purposeful, dedicated, consistent work that will happen over weeks, months, and years. It's a journey. It's not a sprint, but it also follows the entire employee life cycle. So it starts with commitment, a connection to the strategic plan, assessing where we're at today. So what are our workforce analytics? And a lot of this has already started. The agency was already engaging in this work before I joined. And then participation. Engaging in strategic workforce planning, again, getting the right people in the right roles, doing the right work at the right time. So when we need them, how do we attract them? So what is our value proposition at RTD? We're going to be developing that. And then acquiring, bringing people in, empowering them through performance management, engaging the community in the process, and retaining them through growth and succession. As I said, it's more than just a job. There's an opportunity for a career at RTD. So in closing, what I would just want to, we can go to the next slide if oops, no, sorry, you already advanced my apology. So just in closing, I'm sorry, what I would say would be ensuring that we have the right people in the right roles doing the right work at the right time is critical to our success. And so informed by our collective voices at RTD, the community, and empowered by its mission, vision, and values, and the board support, we will construct a strategy that is inclusive, equitable, diverse, and welcoming. And it'll be a culture that unlocks the passion and talent of all, and that provides experiences that keeps people engaged, empowered, and inspired throughout their employee life cycle, from the day they come in for the interview till the day they choose to retire, not choose to separate, but choose to retire from RTD. And that is the goal of what I'll be doing. And in the coming weeks and months, I need to get out and I need to engage in conversations and dialogues and shadowing and hear from the employees within the agency, because that's how we will bring them in. We can't create an employee-centric culture without having the employee voice. And so I will be dedicating appropriate time to that work as well. And so with that somewhat jumbled presentation, my apologies, I will yield the floor and stand by if there are any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was fascinating, regardless of how technologically jumbled it was. And I see that some of the other directors are interested as well. Director Rusha, you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Pileggi. This was a really wonderful presentation, and I really want to applaud you and the GM and staff for engaging in this work. I just had a comment or question. I've noticed that on some of our job postings, like for example, there's one for an HR intern. It says that the applicant must have a driver's license, and I was wondering if that was something that you had considered in also going through our postings and only including that requirement when it's absolutely necessary. I think that in addition to being a transit agency, it can also be an equity barrier.
Yeah, thank you for that, Director Rusha. I can tell you affirmatively, yes, we are, it's a significant project. And one of our new hires, we also have a ADA coordinator that is in the HR team now. And one of the projects that we have is going through all of our job descriptions and identifying and challenging, is that actually a requirement, as you just appropriately pointed out. So that is going to take some time and it'll be ongoing work. But yes, that is a significant project that we are starting on.
Thank you both. Director Rusha, any more? You good?
I do have two more briefly. So one, and I apologize, I might be showing my ignorance, but Ms. Pileggi, you referenced earlier that we didn't have any part-time openings, but we did have full-time openings for train operators. And because we are still suffering from cancellations, sometimes unplanned, is it possible to add more part-time operators, or does that not work for reasons you might be able to explain?
So I wouldn't be able to say definitively with respect to the rail operations. What I can say is that we actually have started, I think just a couple weeks ago, with the recruitment team working with Dave Jensen and others on what could we do with respect to rail operators in particular. It's a highly skilled position, and it is challenging. And so while I wouldn't commit, we're looking at opportunities. I can't say definitively yes, that one, but certainly I will bring that up in those conversations.
Okay, go ahead, Director. One more.
Okay, thank you. And this might just be more of a comment. It's not meant to be a gotcha question. I just was wondering, or I just wanted to put out there that both the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office have fair chance hiring initiatives. And I would just like to state that I would love it if we have not yet considered that kind of partnership, if that's something that we might consider in the future. And this is done in partnership with a lot of community organizations. And I just saw, based on the listings and qualifications required, I think there might be an additional pool of applicants that we could pull from. And so I just wanted to put that out there.
So I would thank you for that. And I would say that we actually already are doing some work in that area. So yeah, that is something that we already are and actually do have, we actually have success with that. So I also support that initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, hand down. Director. Okay, it's okay. General Manager, your hand went down, so I'm not going to you now. Okay. Director Bouquet.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pelagi, for the presentation. Really appreciate it. So my full daytime job as educator, teaching down in Douglas County, we have the conversation regarding career technical education, or CTE. And this might be a comment or it might just be a question overall, but you know, just maybe something to potentially consider as we look at long term. Of we have a potentially very young applicant pool, especially as we have school districts that are looking into, you know, not the push as I was when I was in high school of, oh, which college are you going to, but rather which career are you going into? And so I guess that would just be my one comment, or, you know, slash question, if that's potentially something we could explore into the future. Probably nothing, you know, near term, but again, making sure that we always have an applicant pool. I think looking, you know, younger might potentially be the solution. So thank you for my comments.
May I add?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair Williams. So great comment, and I can say yes. One of the benefits of the decision to increase the size of the recruitment team is our ability to go out and engage in outreach. And I have actually had, I've been having conversations around, when I was saying about the right people in the right role at the right time, that's not just today, that's 5 years down the road. And we do need to be looking and having those conversations. So we have been discussing what our partnerships could be looking like. And I actually did say, you know, getting in there when they're young. And that's, if I just could, that's what's so great. And why I started at the beginning with the diversity of our positions. Because often when you're young, you don't exactly know. I didn't. Well, I did, but you know what I mean? This is a different career than what I first thought I was going to do, but you don't know exactly. And so sometimes getting into an organization with RTD, your opportunity can just explode if only you know that there's opportunity there. So I support that, and we are already having conversations along those lines.
Perfect. I think there's a huge pool of potential there. So thank you for considering that.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Director Sloan.
Thank you, and add my applause for the presentation and the direction you're taking your department in. I have what could be considered a request or a question, and that is, you know, the agency is newly expanding its police department, and that will have a significant effect on the atmosphere and our transit facilities and the feeling of the community about getting on transit. And it would be great if we can see, and again, I know it's new, but in the future, see the hiring, trajectory of the law enforcement, just like you had the train operators and bus drivers and maintenance people. I think that would be really helpful information for the board to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For Ms. Pelagi's benefit, just to let you know, we used to have, and I don't know, there might still be some available that are going on, but we used to have partnership programs that were internships with Metro State Universities, Community College of Denver, and Aurora Community College relative to operators and mechanics. And to the extent that we can reinstate, if they're gone, or expand Those are wonderful resources for recruitment. Thank you.
May I just make a comment? Thank you,
Please.
Chair. Thank you, Director Tisdale. I do support that. I would also say that just for the committee's reference, as part of the last round of bargaining with the represented group in the CBA, there was an agreement. Actually, we are working on trying to establish an apprenticeship program within RTD, and that will also be an incredibly helpful. And so both sides are committed and really interested in conversations, and dialogue are started. Again, that is a longer journey. It takes time to set those programs up well, but I was really pleased to see, and those conversations are happening with Chief Operations Officer Ford and others at the table to try to do that. So, and I highlight that because part of the apprenticeship program has an education component to it, and so there are partnerships there as well.
Thank you for that. That sounds interesting. General Manager, CEO Johnson.
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Ms. Pileggi, for that great presentation and all the questions and the comments that the board members have made. I just wanted to share something as it relates to Director Tisdale and the partnerships with community colleges and universities, that we are actually leveraging a cadet program at MSU Denver as it relates to the police force. And then additionally, to the point that you raised about the community colleges, that too came up this morning in the elected officials briefing. And we were having conversations, and there are some community colleges that may have decided to draw back because of their limited resources. But just to Ms. Pileggi's point, we are engaging once more, and that's why it was such a great opportunity this morning to hear that there's that commitment there. So I just wanted to circle back and just add that, so you guys are all aware that there's tons of things on the table, and we appreciate all the input. This is exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I have one other question myself. I did not see that we are lacking any personnel administratively. Is
So,
that?
Sorry, Charlotte. So we certainly do have vacancies in administration. Our focus there, and I chose to specifically focus in the areas where we had 30 to 40% vacancy rates, and those most directly often will impact our service levels. Now, we do have challenges in IT. IT is a significant challenge for recruitment in just about any organization at this time. But certainly we do have some administration, and we can look at other stats in future presentations. Certainly can do that, but I don't have those at the ready, but I do know we still do have. Our overall vacancy rate for the agency is 18% at this point. But we do have some vacancies in administration.
I just bring it up because I just got, one of those emails that you get in the middle of the meeting from somebody who was just turned down for employment at RTD. And I just wondered if and the letter that we send says, please go to our website and look for other jobs. But I wonder if we look at those people and look at other jobs that they might fit in, instead of just saying to them, goodbye, no thanks. I'm not a HR person, so not my job. I'm trying not to micromanage here. I have your rejection letter right here on my phone from somebody who just emailed it to me. So perhaps we might talk about that offline. Director Ruscia, I'm going to give you another bite of the apple. Go ahead. Your hands up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Briefly, I wanted to know if we have any vacancies or plans to expand any outreach or mental health staff as part of our safety plan and that component. If anyone could answer that.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Please.
So thank you so much, Director Ruscia, for the question. And Chief Fitzgerald and I have had conversations relative to that. And one thing I want to qualify my comments by saying that we pride ourselves on being subject matter experts in the realm of delivering transit services. And so as we look at providing a pathway to those services, it's more or less the partnership aspect. And what I mean by that is how we have the unhoused outreach individual that's done through a grant program, through Jefferson County. So looking at those opportunities holistically as we go down that path, because being in this environment, if you're the lone individual in that space, how can you be supported, but working in tandem? And we've also learned from experience with other transit agencies that are inflicted with the same anti-social behaviors and things of the like. And the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit District, as an example, they invested in this program, spent $350,000. Now, let me qualify. This is according to a report in the San Francisco Chronicle. But spent all this money and was able to place one person because that may not be our bailiwick. And so, looking at all of this holistically as we go forward. So I would leave it there, and then as we come back, we could have greater discussions around what might be, feasible. So, and I don't know if Chief is on the call. But okay.
I am, and
yes, sir, please.
And you hit on every point that I would have hit on. We are also leveraging our partnerships with Denver, so we are providing those services and steering people towards them. We've had, some attrition in regards to some of the providers that we've worked with, but nonetheless, we still work with the city of Denver to provide those services downtown in particular.
Okay, thank you, sir. Welcome back. Thank you, ma'am. I don't see any other hands up. Anybody else have a question or a comment before we move on down the line? Okay, seeing none, are there any other matters that need to come before this committee? Again, seeing no comment. In a moment, this committee will meet an executive session for the battery electric bus project and the New Flyer contract. We're going to reconvene in open session after the executive session ends so that we will then adjourn. I am going to take a motion. We'll come to the break in just a minute. Hold on. I will now entertain a motion to move into executive session regarding the battery electric bus project and the New Flyer contract pursuant to 24-6-402 CRS to receive legal advice and 24-6-402 parand 4 parand ECRS for determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes, sir.
And not as a committee member, but as a volunteer. You may recall we have discussed in the past that when you have a motion to move into executive session, which is at the end of the meeting, you can also append to that motion that the committee will be deemed adjourned following the conclusion of the executive session, so that the committee need not reconvene in open session merely for the purpose of issuing an adjournment, a practice that most city councils follow when they go into executive session. I, of course, yield to general counsel to the extent that she has any comment or observation relative to that, but I just thought it would save some flipping back and forth between meetings. Thank you.
How are you using flipping? Okay, I will then entertain a motion to move into executive session regarding the battery electric bus project and New Flyer contract pursuant to 24-6-402 CRS to receive legal advice and 24-6-402 CRS to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation, with the amendment that this committee will consider itself adjourned at the end of that executive session. Do I have a mover?
So moved. Okay.
I hear Bouquet and I heard Director Broom as the second. Anybody opposed to that? Okay, prior to adjourning, We will take a break. It is 7:43. I'm going to give everybody 7 minutes. Ask that we come back at 7:50 into the executive session. You're out of here, people. This meeting is considered paused.
RTD MyRide has evolved with more features and benefits than ever before. New validators are being installed on buses and rail platforms, and the project is currently well underway. Transfer your existing MyRide card balance to your new account by downloading the RTD MyRide app, creating an account, and completing a transition form. Learn more at rtd-denver.com/myride. Want more information about a specific RTD route or service? Sign up for rider alerts, news, and important updates at rtd-denver.com. If you see something, say something. When riding a train or bus or visiting any of our stations and facilities, report any suspicious activity or packages to RTD's Transit Watch. Download the Transit Watch app, call 303-299-2911 or text 303-434-9100. Move your city. RTD is actively hiring operators, mechanics, and body shop technicians. No commercial driver's license required. Salaries for operators start at $24 per hour. These positions also offer a $4,000 signing bonus, on-the-job training, and great benefits. Apply today at rtd-denver.com/careers. Buy all your RTD tickets and passes on your phone with the RTD MyRide app. Pay your fare with a debit or credit card anytime, anywhere, and bypass lines and ticket kiosks. And best of all, your phone is your ticket. If you already have the RTD Mobile Tickets app, just update it and you'll be ready to go. RTD will be accepting all 2020, 2021, and 2022 10-ride and Access-a-Ride paper tickets as valid fare payment through 2023. This is to accommodate customers who have purchased tickets before and during the pandemic and have not yet returned to riding RTD. Visit rtd-denver.com for details. RTD MyRide has evolved with more features and benefits than ever before. New validators are being installed on buses and rail platforms, and the project is currently well underway. Transfer your existing MyRide card balance to your new account by downloading the RTD MyRide app, creating an account, and completing a transition form. Learn more at rtd-denver.com/myride. Want more information about a specific RTD route or service? Sign up for rider alerts, news, and important updates at rtd-denver.com. If you see something, say something. When riding a train or bus or visiting any of our stations and facilities, report any suspicious activity or packages to RTD's Transit Watch. Download the Transit Watch app, call 303-299-2911 or text 303-434-9100. Move your city. RTD is actively hiring operators, mechanics, and body shop technicians. No commercial driver's license required. Salaries for operators start at $24 per hour. These positions also offer a $4,000 signing bonus, on-the-job training, and great benefits. Apply today at rtd-denver.com/careers. Buy all your RTD tickets and passes on your phone with the RTD MyRide app. Pay your fare with a debit or credit card anytime, anywhere, and bypass lines and ticket kiosks. And best of all, your phone is your ticket. If you already have the RTD Mobile Tickets app, just update it and you'll be ready to go. RTD will be accepting all 2020, 2021, and 2022 10-ride and Access-a-Ride paper tickets as valid fare payment through 2023. This is to accommodate customers who have purchased tickets before and during the pandemic and have not yet returned to riding RTD. Visit rtd-denver.com for details. RTD MyRide has evolved with more features and benefits than ever before. New validators are being installed on buses and rail platforms, and the project is currently well underway. Transfer your existing MyRide card balance to your new account by downloading the RTD MyRide app, creating an account, and completing a transition form. Learn more at rtd-denver.com/myride. Want more information about a specific RTD route or service? Sign up for rider alerts, news, and important updates at rtd-denver.com. If you see something, say something. When riding a train or bus or visiting any of our stations and facilities, report any suspicious activity or packages to RTD's Transit Watch. Download the Transit Watch app, call 303-299-2911 or text 303-434-9100. Move your city. RTD is actively hiring operators, mechanics, and body shop technicians. No commercial driver's license required. Salaries for operators start at $24 per hour. These positions also offer a $4,000 signing bonus, on-the-job training, and great benefits. Apply today at rtd-denver.com/careers. Buy all your RTD tickets and passes on your phone with the RTD MyRide app. Pay your fare with a debit or credit card anytime, anywhere, and bypass lines and ticket kiosks. And best of all, your phone is your ticket. If you already have the RTD Mobile Tickets app, just update it and you'll be ready to go. RTD will be accepting all 2020, 2021, and 2022 10-ride and Access-a-Ride paper tickets as valid fare payment through 2023. This is to accommodate customers who have purchased tickets before and during the pandemic and have not yet returned to riding RTD. Visit rtd-denver.com for details. RTD MyRide has evolved with more features and benefits than ever before. New validators are being installed on buses and rail platforms, and the project is currently well underway. Transfer your existing MyRide card balance to your new account by downloading the RTD MyRide app, creating an account, and completing a transition form. Learn more at rtd-denver.com/MyRide. Want more information about a specific RTD route or service? Sign up for rider alerts, news, and important updates at rtd-denver.com. If you see something, say something. When riding a train or bus or visiting any of our stations and facilities, report any suspicious activity or packages to RTD's Transit Watch. Download the Transit Watch app, call 303-299-2911, or text 303-434-9100. Move your city. RTD is actively hiring operators, mechanics, and body shop technicians. No commercial driver's license required. Salaries for operators start at $24 per hour. These positions also offer a $4,000 signing bonus, on-the-job training, and great benefits. Apply today at rtd-denver.com/careers. Buy all your RTD tickets and passes on your phone with the RTD MyRide app. Pay your fare with a debit or credit card anytime, anywhere, and bypass lines and ticket kiosks. And best of all, your phone is your ticket. If you already have the RTD Mobile Tickets app, just update it and you'll be ready to go. RTD will be accepting all 2020, 2021, and 2022 10-ride and Access-a-Ride paper tickets as valid fare payment through 2023. This is to accommodate customers who have purchased tickets before and during the pandemic and have not yet returned to riding RTD. Visit rtd-denver.com for details. RTD MyRide has evolved with more features and benefits than ever before. New validators are being installed on buses and rail platforms, and the project is currently well underway. Transfer your existing MyRide card balance to your new account by downloading the RTD MyRide app, creating an account, and completing a transition form. Learn more at rtd-denver.com/MyRide. Want more information about a specific RTD route or service? Sign up for rider alerts, news, and important updates at rtd-denver.com. If you see something, say something. When riding a train or bus or visiting any of our stations and facilities, report any suspicious activity or packages to RTD's Transit Watch. Download the Transit Watch app, call 303-299-2911 or text 303-434-9100. Move your city. RTD is actively hiring operators, mechanics, and body shop technicians. No commercial driver's license required. Salaries for operators start at $24 per hour. These positions also offer a $4,000 signing bonus, on-the-job training, and great benefits. Apply today at rtd-denver.com/careers. Buy all your RTD tickets and passes on your phone with the RTD MyRide app. Pay your fare with a debit or credit card anytime, anywhere, and bypass lines and ticket kiosks. And best of all, your phone is your ticket. If you already have the RTD Mobile Tickets app, just update it and you'll be ready to go. RTD will be accepting all 2020, 2021, and 2022 10-ride and Access-a-Ride paper tickets as valid fare payment through 2023. This is to accommodate customers who have purchased tickets before and during the pandemic and have not yet returned to riding RTD. Visit rtd-denver.com for details. RTD MyRide has evolved with more features and benefits than ever before. New validators are being installed on buses and rail platforms, and the project is currently well underway. Transfer your existing MyRide card balance to your new account by downloading the RTD MyRide app, creating an account, and completing a transition form. Learn more at rtd-denver.com/MyRide. Want more information about a specific RTD route or service? Sign up for rider alerts, news, and important updates at rtd-denver.com. If you see something, say something. When riding a train or bus or visiting any of our stations and facilities, report any suspicious activity or packages to RTD's Transit Watch.